Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Darcy Bennett. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Policy and Programs at the Law Foundation of BC. I've been here about 6 months. This is my first provincial training conference as a Law Foundation staff, and it looks a little bit different than maybe I had imagined, but I just want to start by acknowledging everybody on the team at the Law Foundation, at LABC, all the panelists for pivoting and making this happen, and to all of you for figuring out the technology and taking the time to do this. It's been really phenomenal to watch it all come together. And I'm really grateful to be able to connect with you all virtually. But I also want to start by recognizing that although we're coming together in this virtual space, we are all rooted in place and embedded in communities. And I am personally working, living, and doing this work as an uninvited settler on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam people. And our panelists are going to be joining us today from territories across the lands that are known as British Columbia. Also wanted to start with a few housekeeping items. I know most of you on this webinar have been through this already and are old hat at this by now, but just start by letting you know we have 2 hours together. We do have a fairly large but very interesting panel that are going to be speaking to us today. And we have some tech support in case people run into problems trying to ask a question, get disconnected, any of those kinds of things. We have Kayla, Anna, and Tim, and you can reach them in the chat. That's probably the best way to sort of get their attention if you're having an issue that is related to sort of the technical end of what we're doing here today. You will be muted, but questions are very welcome. So we have the chat function you can see down here at the bottom of your screen, but we also have a Q&A section. And that is really the place for you to put sort of substantive questions. So questions about the content, not sort of questions about speakers or technical issues. And what I'm going to do is monitor that with the help of Kayla and Tim as well. And as we're doing that, just sort of wait for the right moment to pose a question. So as I said, we have a number of speakers. We've kind of broken up the speakers into 2 chunks. So we're going to start with our specialized legal clinics, and then we're going to get into our regional poverty law clinics. So there'll be an opportunity for questions sort of in between there, but if you have a specific question for a specific panelist, kind of right after they're talking, we might pose it to them before we move on to the next person, but we do want to make sure we get through everybody. So most questions we'll kind of reserve to the end of the various sections. And then hopefully we can answer all the questions you might have about that. There's also, if you go into your Sched app, you'll be able to see some documents and some resources that our panelists have uploaded for you. You may want to get in contact with them and get to know them better, or realize that you're working on something where there'd be a great connection. You can visit the Law Foundation's website under the legal help section, and you can find out where all of these people work. You can take a look at their websites and track them down that way as well. As always, the panel will be recorded. So if you are posing questions, obviously I'm going to be vetting them, but try to keep any question that might contain any sensitive or personal information. We'll try to keep that as generic as possible because we're a huge group here on the phone and we're recording this for the future. So what we're going to do is start with everybody giving you a little bit of an overview of your the clinics. These aren't all of our clinics, so we've brought this group together. We also fund a number of clinical programs that work with students through universities, off university campuses. We also have regional poverty law lawyers who are working in the north, out of Prince George, and also in Kelowna, who aren't here today, but you can find their information on the website as well. So some of these clinics have been working with in partnership with the Law Foundation for a long time. some of you have probably worked with a lot of these faces on the screen before. We've also had a huge increase in the number of clinical programs that the Law Foundation is able to support, and thanks from a really generous and strategic contribution by the provincial government that has allowed some of these clinics to get up and running in the community. And so we're really excited to have them here and to be able to share with you what those clinics are up to. So people will start with a little bit of background of who they are, what their clinics do, some of what's going on in their communities or the types of issues that they work on, and then we'll have a little bit of conversation. You'll see that there's some crossover in what clinics do, and then there's some unique features as well. We are going to start with our specialized clinics, and I'm just going to let you know in advance that Zuzana and Robb from the TRAC clinic, who are going to go first, are going to have to jump off at about 3 p.m. because Robb has his call ceremony, which is really exciting. But if we want to get questions into them, we'll try to do that in the first half. And again, you can find their contact information and reach out to them and learn a little bit more about what they do. So given that we have a large panel, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to kind of cover a vast landscape here today. Maybe I'll just get us started with our specialized clinics. And to do that, I'm going to start us off with Zuzana Modrovic and Robb Patterson, who run the housing clinic out of TRAC that I'm sure many of you are familiar with and have worked with in the past. So this is a new addition to their program. And maybe I'll just turn it over to the two of you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm Zuzana. I'm the lawyer at the Housing Law Clinic, and this is Robb. He's currently the articling student here. Clinic's been running since January of this year. We have a provincial mandate, and so we can basically assist tenants throughout the province. The bulk of what we're doing is judicial review of RTV decisions. We also do collections for tenants who have monetary orders and some sort of tenancy matters that are not RTV matters. So we help roommates who have disputes with their roommates, and we also help some tenants in co-ops or members of co-ops who live in housing co-ops but are not covered by the RTV. We take on some RTV cases, but we generally only do that if there's something particularly complex about it or it has some systemic importance.
And TRAC still has its direct representation program where we have one advocate who still does our RTV representation. So TRAC altogether still sort of does the full tenancy package. And I think in terms of like the full scope of the Housing Law Clinic, it's sort of anything that doesn't fall under the RTA, the RTV, or the MHPTA and it's a tenancy is within our sort of mandate. So anything that comes up, if you're not sure whether we'd be able to do it, it's good to ask.
For sure. And residential tenancies, not commercial ones, I should add.
Well qualified.
Yeah. Should add that we also have a new advocate who started with us on the 1st of this month, so very new. He's specifically dealing with nonprofit housing in Vancouver or anything housing related that has something to do with the COVID-19 measures. And that's, I think, all we wanted to say about the clinic for now.
Yeah, in terms of the intake process, the classic way we're doing it is through our paralegal, Anna. Her email and phone number are available on our website and the direct representation or get legal representation tab on the front page. But you can also, you can contact her and let her know that you're in another clinic founded by the Law Foundation and you want to connect with us. But you can also contact us directly. If you don't have our contact information, you can contact Anna. You can also say, I'm sure our phone number and emails are available on the Law Foundation website or others. We can also just say that our phone number is 604-255-3099, extension 223 for myself and 228 for Zuzana. And our emails are just our first names at tenants.bc.ca. And you can reach out if you have questions about ongoing files or if you have someone to refer to any one of our programs. Yeah.
Thanks, both of you. And that contact information can also be found on the Law Foundation site. Go to legal help, contact lists, and you'll be able to find all of that as well in case you didn't catch all of that. Thanks so much, both of you. I'm going to turn us over to Lobat Sadrehashemi, who's the clinic lawyer at the Immigration and Refugee Legal Clinic.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I am at the new Immigration Refugee Clinic. I have been working in poverty law, human rights law, and mainly immigration refugee law for the past 14 years. And I came to Vancouver like October of 2006, so 14 years ago, as a new lawyer. And the thing I wanted the most was that there be a legal clinic in BC dealing with immigration and refugee issues. So it's been a long time, 14 years, but it's here. And so I'm glad that it's here, and I'm glad to be a part of helping to think about how to set it up. And I should say there used to be, prior to my time as a lawyer here, my time living in Vancouver, there was a refugee clinic prior to the cuts in 2002. And from what I have heard, they did great work, and they were really missed during this time. Because part of what we see as our vision and our goal is to kind of act as a safety net for people who have immigration and refugee issues that aren't covered or not easily covered within the traditional legal aid system. So, and because many of those years I worked as a private bar refugee lawyer doing a lot of legal aid work, I'm definitely, as anyone that's worked in this area or worked around this area knows, there is a lot of gaps. And so this clinic our hope is to be able to help to fill some of the gaps some of the time. I mean, we are small, but we're hoping and are starting to do some of that work. So we opened April 1st. So we are, as Darcy's explained, we're independent. We're funded through, it's a joint program through Law Foundation and the provincial government. And we're housed at ISS of BC's Welcome House, though because we started April 1st, we are a post-COVID clinic. And so we meet sometimes in person to do some signing of documents and things, but generally we are operating remotely by phone and by video, and a lot of three-way calls with interpreters and clients. But that's how we started. So it's been about 6 months. The clinic itself is, it's myself. We have a legal assistant. If you've called the clinic before, you would have talked to Jinhee Lee, who is right now on mat leave. And right now our legal assistant is Omar Chu. We have another vacant position for a staff lawyer at the clinic that we will be hiring for. And yeah, that's who makes up the clinic. And then in terms of what we do, the bulk of our focus and energy is on either doing summary advice or full representation. So if somebody were to call the clinic, likely, I mean, you can call, you can email, or you can fill an intake form. And in the sheet that I uploaded to the Sketch, it has the intake link. That's also on our website. And there's a phone number and email. So if any of those methods you used, your first kind of contact or interaction is going to be with Omar Chu. And Omar will likely need to contact you as the advocate or the client to get further information. And then if it is something that fits within our area, then we would schedule an appointment for a summary advice meeting with the lawyer, where we review the issue and see whether either we are, we're providing some advice, we're either referring to another agency, assisting you in applying to legal aid, or we're deciding to take on the case ourselves. And so that, that question of, what cases do we decide to end up taking on as full representation cases is not, I don't have like a, we always do these ones or we never do these ones, because there are a lot of different issues that the whole point of the clinic is to help people to not fall from the cracks. So we don't want to be very restrictive from the outset on the types of cases we will do as full representation. So what we're looking at, though, because we are small and we have to prioritize, is we do full representation where there's either it's litigation or there's an application that requires legal submissions. And then we look at, is there a complexity to the legal issue, or is there a complexity in the client care issues? Is there the client's homeless or has a mental health issue, or is it detained? Things that make it difficult for them to be able to get appropriate services from a private bar lawyer in the legal aid system, or is there an urgency to the case, and so it's difficult to match with someone, there's a removal happening or there's some kind of deadline, and we are able and have the capacity to assist. Those are the kinds of cases that we are deciding to do full representation on. So, but as I say, this is all new, and so those kind of how we see those priorities, our mandates may shift as we hear more and more about what are the kind of gaps that we need to be filling. But for now, that's how we're seeing it. And yeah, I mean, and then in addition to that, those are our core activities, but we're also, working on some systemic litigation issues and advocacy, and hoping to, we're mentoring some law students and hoping to build a mentorship program for junior lawyers that are wanting to do work in this area. I think that's all for me now, and I'm happy to take questions later. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, please feel free to put questions into the chat, even if we're going to save them to the end as they pop up for you. And I think the contact information is also in the chat. Chat now. So our next panelist is Andrew Robb of the Disability Law Clinic at Disability Alliance BC. So Andrew, I will pass this over to you.
Thank you. Hi, yeah. My name is Andrew Robb, and I am also on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples. I'm the staff lawyer at the new Disability Law Clinic, which just opened in March of this year. We are the first, to the best of my knowledge, we're the first nonprofit legal clinic in Western Canada that practices exclusively in the area of disability rights law. Right now, there are just two of us working in the clinic. That is myself and my colleague Selena, who does most of the intake and responds to inquiries from the public. I uploaded our Disability Law Clinic brochure to the SCED website, and I'm going to be referring to it in just a moment. First, I'll say just a little about myself. I've been a lawyer for about 10 years in 3 provinces. I've always worked in what I would call loosely the access to justice sector. Before I started this job at the Disability Law Clinic, I worked in Southern Alberta at a community legal clinic called Lethbridge Legal Guidance. And before that, I worked for provincial government legal aid organizations in Ontario and in Alberta. I also wanted to say a bit about Disability Alliance BC, or DABC, which hosts the Disability Law Clinic. As many of you will know, DABC has been advocating for people with disabilities for many years. Its office is in Vancouver, but both DABC and the Disability Law Clinic have province-wide mandates, meaning we can assist people in any part of the province depending on what the issue that they need assistance with is. And our website is disabilityalliancebc.org. And the Law Clinic's website is linked to on the main DABC website. Next, I'm going to refer to our brochure, and as I said, I uploaded it to the SCED website for this event. I hope you had a chance to look at it, but in any case, I'm going to be repeating much of the info there. What it says is that people with disabilities often experience discrimination and lack of access around public services and programs. The ABC has begun a new project, the Disability Law Clinic, to provide free legal advice and assistance to people with disabilities. We will assist people living in British Columbia with legal issues related to accessibility and discrimination, including accommodation in the workplace, access to transportation and education, issues related to accessible housing, and as well as access to supports and assistive devices and technologies, including issues related to service animals. In some cases, the Disability Law Clinic may be able to assist people with disability-related human rights cases at the BC Human Rights Tribunal, but also at the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Federal Canadian Transportation Agency. We may be able to assist with questions or concerns about disability-related service providers, such as care homes or support workers or attendants. We can assist with, and we can represent people, in fact, in cases involving decision-making rights and supported decision-making, where someone's ability to make decisions for themselves might have been called into question, for example, in cases involving court-appointed guardians and trustees or the public guardian and trustee. And we can also try to answer questions and deal with concerns about private long-term disability insurance benefits. The Law Clinic will also work closely with DABC's Advocacy Access Program to assist people who are applying for government disability benefits or who are involved in disputes with the government about their benefits. And I should clarify that DABC's frontline advocates will continue to be helping people apply for benefits, as they have always done, but the Law Clinic might get involved if, for example, an application is denied and the case has to go to court, or even if it just has to go to a tribunal, such as the Employment and Assistance Appeal Tribunal or the Social Security Tribunal, if the case is especially complex or for some other reason an advocate isn't able to do it. As it says in our brochure, most of our services are provided by phone, especially during the pandemic, but of course we will do our best to accommodate anyone whose disability requires them to communicate by other methods. The brochure has our contact info. Right now, the best way to reach us is probably by email, and the email address, it's on the brochure, but I'll read it out. It is lawclinic@disabilityalliancebc.org. I should add also that our scope of service is still a work in progress. It is certainly possible that we may be able to assist with some legal issues that I haven't specifically mentioned here. The key is certainly the connection to a person's disability. And in many cases, it will be difficult for us to assist someone who calls on behalf of a person with disability unless they have some kind of formal legal arrangement with the person with the disability that they're calling about, such as a representation agreement or a power of attorney or a court order. What we're really trying to do is focus on assisting people with disabilities themselves. We definitely get a lot of calls about legal issues that we can't cover, that we're not able to cover for some reason. And I think that's because a lot of people hear our name and automatically assume that we can provide legal assistance to people with disabilities with any type of legal issue. And of course, that is a very broad category because many people have disabilities, and of course, those people have all kinds of different legal issues. But for us, the key is really that the legal issue itself must be disability related. For example, it would be very unusual for us to get involved in a a family law or a criminal law case, because we don't consider those to be disability-related areas of law, even though I know that people with disabilities can be disproportionately affected by those types of legal issue. So admittedly, there is a lot of gray area in terms of what constitutes a disability-related area of law and what kind of work we can do. And that's a big reason why our scope of service is still a work in progress, and it's difficult for me to say exactly what we can and cannot do. So I encourage any advocates to contact me. You can reach me at andrew@disabilityalliancebc.org. That is not in the brochure, and I would prefer you don't give my email address to clients, but I'm always happy to talk to any advocate who has questions about any legal issue related to a client's disability. I think that is all I had planned to say, subject to any questions, but I hope I will have a chance to speak with many of you soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we do have a question for you here, but maybe what I will do, actually this one's really specific to you, so I'm just going to read it out.
Yeah.
Can the disability law clinic support clients with mental health issues who are looking for advocacy to challenge the PGT, which I unfortunately don't know what that means, when they're under an extension of the Mental Health Act or when their decision making is being restricted by being under the Mental Health Act?
Right, and so I think the PGT there refers to the public guardian and trustee. And the answer is yes, we are able to assist in many of those cases. I'm not in a position here to say for sure we're going to be able to represent any particular client, but that is an area of law that we are able to assist with. To some extent, I know that CLAS has done some work in that area in the past, and we are working with them to share some of that work. But the short answer is yes, and if you do have a question about those areas, or if you have a client who is affected by those issues, you can certainly feel free to contact me or give them our contact information.
And then I've got a few more people asking for your email. Is that okay if I put that in the chat now?
Yeah, no problem. And as I said, it's andrew@disabilityalliancebc.org.
Andrew at, I'll do that. I'll actually, I've got a few other questions that are a bit more general to everybody, so I'll save those to the end. I will put Andrew's email in there, and then actually, do you want to put your email in the chat just so I don't misspell it?
Sure, yeah, that's fine. And I will only add that I'm happy for anyone here to have my email address. Please don't distribute it far and wide. If it is a client who needs to contact us, it is better for them to contact us at our email address, which is the law, but not the law clinic @disabilityalliancebc.org, or to call our phone number, which I'm just checking now. Yes, it is listed on the brochure, so I encourage you to look at our brochure for the phone number for the legal clinic.
Okay, and then I'll save the rest of the questions for later, and I will just pass things over to Suzette Narbonne, who's from the Child and Youth Legal Center at Society for Children and Youth.
Thank you. It's always so cool to do this and to hear about all the new programs that are out there. So I'm really pleased to be part of this panel. With respect to the Child and Youth Legal Center, we are committed to improving the well-being of children and youth in BC through the advancement of their legal rights. We launched in October of 2017, so by the standards of a lot of these groups, we're ancient. We, at the time, had one phone in the middle of an empty room and 2 lawyers and an executive director. Now, I was just doing the math, and there's 11 of us all in working with children to help support children's rights. So it's pretty amazing. We also have pro bono students who work with us throughout the school year. We have an articling student this year. And we are really excited about it's not quite launching yet, but we're developing a youth advisory committee who will advise us at the Society for Children and Youth generally. So we've always worked to be informed by youth voices, and making that advisory committee was just a piece of that. So what do we do? Well, depending on the circumstances of a young person, our services can range from just referring them out to resources that will help them, to providing them with some summary legal advice or legal information, to advocating on their behalf, whether it's at a court or a tribunal or at school or with social workers. So really a broad range of advocacy services for children. We will participate in mediations, negotiations, and we have 3 lawyers. The lawyers do go to court far too much lately for young people. So we can support young people whether their matters in court or not is not in court. We always get asked about the age limit, and basically the way we do our services is the child has to be able to instruct a lawyer. So in practical terms, we have found children as young as 7 or 8 sometimes can instruct counsel. And instructing means understanding what the lawyer is explaining, understanding the role of the lawyer in the child way, but it isn't a huge bar. And being able to articulate their concerns in a way that the lawyer can then understand them. So as I say, we've represented children certainly very young. If I had to guess, I would say around 11 and older is where we see most of our clients. If you have a young person who needs to understand their rights and is a little bit younger, don't guess, just contact us and we can help you with that. In terms of the upper age range, we generally will only represent children up to the time that they hit the age of majority, but there are exceptions. So if a young person has hit the age of majority, but the legal issue arose while they were still a child, we generally will support them through that. And we certainly don't cut off services when they hit a certain age. We provide services, so we're based in Vancouver on Commercial Drive, although I'm blessed to live in Sechelt, and that's where I am right now. We also have a roster of lawyers throughout the province. We're always developing that, so if any of you are talking to lawyers who are interested in being on our roster, again, just get a hold of us. They can do it through the website, they can apply right through our website, and they can always call us and we can chat with them. But the lawyers throughout the province will provide the same kind of services we provide. So how do you connect someone with us? Firstly, anyone can refer a young person, but the young person has to want our assistance. So that means that a teacher, a caregiver, such as a parent or a grandparent, therapists, social workers, you name it, can refer the child, and the young person can refer themselves too. And I was thinking back early on, one of my first files was a self-referral from a young person. I don't think we had been actually on the website more than about a week, and then she found us, and I ended up representing her. So we're happy to have the referral from anyone. They just phone us or email us, and I did provide a one-pager to the Law Foundation that hopefully you have in your materials, but otherwise we're the Society for Children and Youth of BC, so you can find us that way. But they just call, either Ashley or Sabrina will take their call, and the intake is done over the phone, and then from there they're streamed to either our advocate or our social worker or to a lawyer, depending on whether or not we can assist them. So what do we do? I think the most important thing that a children's lawyer does is to frame the issues around the young person and make them front and center in the decisions that are being made about them. Too often there's a feeling that by excluding the child, you're protecting the child, but it's simply not the reality. The conflict often between the caregivers is so much when it's a family law matter that they're just not able to separate the conflict from their child's needs. And so allowing the child to have a voice is super important. And that's what we do. We will, in the court setting, we will, as I said, make the child front and center. We will bring the child's voice to the court. And my experience is once children's counsel is on the file, usually the first person the judge wants to hear from is the child through the child's lawyer. So that's amazing. We don't make the child a witness in the proceeding. We don't bring them to court. An exception would be if the child has an appointment to talk to the judge. And in that case, they would meet with the judge in private and in confidence. So we just don't make them part of that process. But we do get their voices to court through people who they tell us we can speak to. So maybe their counselors and their teachers and their support people. Often we find children don't want to actually give their opinion on outcomes. They don't want to decide, but they do want to be heard and to have any decisions that are made take into consideration their views. So again, that's something the children's lawyer can do. Some of the things our advocate does is to advocate with the school for certain things, to attend mediations, to help the children connect with resources. I know I'm missing a million things that she does, but there's just a wide range of services we can give to the child. The value to the child is that conflict gets reduced in the family law setting, because now I can't tell you how many times two incredibly angry parents have come together on their child's position once they've heard that position from one of our lawyers and not from the other side. So we can help reduce conflict. We can help so that things get heard in a more timely fashion, rather than waiting months, years for reports. We can be there letting people know right then and there what's going on. We can give timely information. So as things change, we can keep the child's views current with the shifting landscapes. The benefit for the child is really that when a child is actively involved in problem solving and when they're given recognition for the fact that their views are actually important and that they're being heard, those children are empowered and their self-esteem grows and they really feel that they've been treated with dignity. So I just want to close with a couple of comments that we just received, just to kind of frame the work that we do. So one parent wrote to us, I want to thank you for being such a loyal advocate for my child over the better part of the last year. It is such a relief to me knowing that she has a voice in this whole process, and I can see how empowering and reassuring it has been for her knowing that she can count on you. And then just one more comment that we received, and this was from a grandparent. It is with deep gratitude that I write regarding your recent advocacy for my granddaughter. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for representing her, for supporting her, for believing in her, and for being her voice. Thank you for pushing so hard for an outcome that allowed my granddaughter to experience the dignity and the responsibility of making important life choices. So I'm happy to answer questions. That's just a snapshot of some of the things we do, but I'm so privileged to get to do this kind of work. And I do want to thank the Law Foundation again for all their support for our program.
Thank you so much. We do have a couple of really specific questions for you, so maybe I'll grab those now. The first is from someone who said that a client had tried to reach out and heard that both parents needed to consent, and she's just wondering if that's correct.
So that was, no, this is how it works. So firstly, we don't need any parent's consent to speak to a child, and there is law on that. We were, I'll just give you the current answer rather than explaining the process, how we landed there. If a child wants to connect with us, either parent or the child themselves can connect that child with us. if we are going to represent the child in court, we have to have a court order, and that's simply the law. So that can happen by consent, or it can happen by one of the parties applying for us to be appointed. We do not ourselves apply because we don't make the child a party. So that's the answer to that. And yeah, there was a time when we were trying to get the consent of the parents. It's always better, not necessary.
Thank you. One other question. So this is from someone who's wondering whether or not you could represent a young person who identifies as Aboriginal and also with complex mental health issues.
As Aboriginal, absolutely. Complex mental health issues, it's simply going to depend. We do represent young people with complex mental health issues. The question is always going to come down to whether or not they can sufficiently instruct counsel. And the reason for that is, as a practicing lawyer, you have certain professional obligations. Our advocate can provide legal support and assistance without forming the solicitor-client relationship, and so can have a bit broader range of ability. And as I said, we do have a social worker with a master's in social work who can provide some unique help. But I do want to really emphasize, even though some kids think we're not counselors. We really are lawyers. So we can assist as long as it's a legal type of problem.
Thank you so much. We do have a number of other questions, but they're a bit more general. So I am going to pass it over to the other end of the life spectrum. We have Gordon Marshall here from the Elder Law Clinic at Seniors First. So let's pass it over to you.
Thank you. The other spectrum, you say?
Across the lifespan, our services.
I've lost my, I don't see anyone any longer. But can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you. We just don't see you.
I don't know what's happened, but I would, let me, I apologize for that. Let me
We can see you now.
Can you? All right. Gordon Marshall's my name. I'm a lawyer. I have practiced law since I think 1972. I retired from full-time practice in 2015 and joined Seniors First BC on a part-time, short-term basis. I'm still there. The services that Seniors First offers to that are funded by the Law Foundation and that are relevant to today is an elder law clinic. We provide pro bono legal services to British Columbia seniors who cannot afford to engage a lawyer, and a legal advocacy program that is handled by a legal advocate. The service outline for both branches of the operation I have given to Lois Shelton, and she said she is adding it to our material. So I expect it's there. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to use my time to address three things. I want to describe our services, and I will do that largely by example of the kinds of cases we have done, where you can find us to assist us or for assistance, and how you can reach us for your clients. So the legal services, we're considered by some to be the Walmart of lawyers. We do a broad range of work. We do advanced planning for older adults, wills, powers of attorney, notice of appointment of committee, representation agreements. It was asked one time, why are you doing wills for people who live in poverty? It was a good question until one older person who I was taking will instructions from, she had nothing. She only had some sticks of furniture that her landlord said he would look after. But she had been putting away money for years and years to support an orphanage that she had a large heart for. And I'm thinking, oh boy, if we're dealing with a large amount of money, I don't know whether a trust is going to be involved. We may get sort of beyond what we can do. I said to her, how much money do you have put away? And she said, $1,000. She said, I sometimes have to go into it to pay the rent, but I try to pay it back. So it struck me really early that these are dignity wills we're doing for people. They don't have much to give away, but they feel a whole lot better knowing that their affairs are in order. We work in the field of litigation. That's my area. I was a trial lawyer my whole career. And we help people with collections, people who have misused powers of attorney, taken accounts, used them for themselves. We bring actions to recover that back. A lot of actions against grandchildren and adult children who've borrowed the debit card or some money to supposedly do something for the older adult and end up running off with it. So we chase deadbeats like that. We have an example where an older man was approached by his niece saying, Uncle, if you could give me $60,000, I can afford to buy a townhouse, and that would then allow you to have a room to live in for as long as you need it. And he said, that's a great idea, and he gave her the money. They hadn't been in the house 10 days when he returned home from having coffee to find that the locks had been changed. So we took an action on his behalf, recovered back his money and his costs. We resist collections made against the collections being sought. Often credit card companies are trying to extract not so much the debt, but the 19% interest that's run over the years. So we assist in those respects. Foreclosures, when there's little or no equity, just to make certain that if there is a wee bit of equity left at the end of the day, that it's not eaten by legal costs and so forth, so we can put a kind of a stick in the wheel and stop the cost process from running. Canada, we had an example of an older woman who was duped by her sister. Sister said, I'm going to acquire this piece of property, put a mortgage on it, but you know that old rat husband of mine, I don't want him to have any part of it. So can we put it in your name and you sign the documents? I'll just pay the mortgage, and then you can transfer to me later when all of my divorce stuff is over with. And she said, well, sure, sister, that's fine. Well, of course, sister was a bad actor, didn't make the payments, went into foreclosure. Wouldn't you know it, there wasn't enough equity to cover or enough value to cover the mortgage. It ended up, there was a shortfall of $75,000. It was assigned by the bank to CMHC, who then brought an action on the covenant against this old woman and had a judgment about $75,000 against her. It took us about 2 years of persuasion with Canada Revenue Agency until they finally agreed that they would waive enforcement of their judgment. So those kinds of things in collection matters and money matters. We dealt with ashes. We had a stepdaughter come to us whose stepmother had died and there was no family whatsoever. And stepdaughter said, all I want are her ashes. Public guardian and trustee said, you can't have them because you're not one of the people who's listed in the Cremation, Interment, and Funeral Services Act. And we said, not so fast, Kowalski, and we brought a petition to the court and received an order that the ashes be delivered to the stepdaughter through an exception. We had a woman come in who had a bad deal with her dentist. She wanted to have some teeth repaired, and the dentist said, oh, I'll make you a really nice plate and some false teeth, but I'll need some money. Took $8,000 out of her back pocket, brought the teeth to her when they were done, and the lady didn't like them. She said they looked like dog teeth, so I don't want them. We assisted her in a small claims action on assistance to her doing parts of the work, and we did other parts for her. She got her money back. We're in the process now in a Supreme Court action enforcing a life interest that was created in a self-made will that has created all sorts of challenges with the new landowner shutting off power and trying to chase the person out. But we are making good progress and have, I think, established the right to the life interest. We've had insurance claims. A woman came to live with her family for a couple of years from abroad, was obliged to buy a health insurance policy. Did so, found herself in hospital for 2 weeks, was discharged from one of our local hospitals with a bill in her back pocket of $44,000. Made the claim to the insurance company, and the insurance company said, "Oh, we see here that you were supposed to be taking a salt tablet every 3 days, and we understand that you haven't done that for the last 10 days, so we're denying the claim." So we brought a claim against the insurance company, and after about 2 years, succeeded in having the insurance company agree to indemnify her for the claim. We assist with Patient Property Act matters, folks who want to challenge the order that has them in guardianship. We've succeeded on 2 occasions in having people discharged from guardianship. The greatest challenge is when people want to be discharged, but there really oughtn't to be, and there's not a basis for it, is persuading them or trying to explain to them why it's not going to work. We find ourselves dealing with last-minute pleadings up against limitation dates. We're in the midst of one right now where a woman came in to see us just last week. There's a limitation date that expires this week, and it's the kind of case we can't take, but we are going to have to do the pleadings for her and get them filed, and then see about getting her arranged for counsel. So we do these last-minute kinds of things. We operate a trial preparation clinic for persons who are self-represented, whether it's in the Supreme Court or the small claims court, and help them with their pleadings, getting them in order, helping them muster their evidence, help them in how to present their evidence. On occasions, we will take them on a full rep basis. So that's the range of work is one that it's very simply written down. You'll see in the notes that we do this, and the other thing. But if you look at the wide range of complaints and concerns that people have, we're open to all of them. We have 2 part-time lawyers. I'm one. We have another part-time lawyer. We manage to do as much as we can, but we welcome any kind of referrals. When you find people who just don't fit into your area so much, please let them have a chat with us. Even if we can't help them, we can direct some traffic and hopefully find them in the right spot. There are a couple of excluded areas that reminded me when one of my colleagues was speaking. We don't look after criminal matters, more's the pity. I love criminal law, but nor do we do family matters. I like that. Last divorce I did was in 1975, so I still clear of that. But we ask our intake people who receive calls, please refer them to us, to the law clinic, even though we don't do family law, we don't do criminal law, because these folks often need direction to a lawyer because there are time limits they're facing, there are warrants that are outstanding. So rather than just say, sorry, it's not what we do, we take them on and we help them find their way or get them to where they should go, where they can deal with the issue. Where do we do this work? Well, we have 7 satellite clinics throughout the Lower Mainland. We've been in a state of flux with those because of COVID. We do our clinics by telephone consultations now. We don't have the face-to-face meetings, but we're hoping that once our venues, host venues open up, that we're going to be able to get those back into business. We have an office at 900 House Street. We share space with the People's Law School, and we have a good working facility that is now set up with COVID protection screens and such. So we're starting now to have people come back. Our problem is that the seniors we work with generally have to travel by transit, and they're reluctant to do so. So we're getting back into business slowly. We also do a lot of work by telephone, a lot of consultations and such by telephone. But when it comes down to taking on a full retainer, we do need to have the people come in and see us. How do you reach us? Our numbers are in the material that Lois kindly uploaded for me. But for now, you can call our office directly. We have a direct number for any legal service that's being looked at. It will go to our office manager, legal assistant, and referred to one of the lawyers. or the Senior Abuse and Information Line, which is operated by Seniors First BC, and it will be referred to us through SAIL. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We do have a few specific questions, but I believe Kevin Love needs to go. So I'm going to save those specific questions for you and turn it over to Kevin Love at CLAS's Community Legal Program.
Hi there, can everyone hear me okay? Well, I guess you're all muted, so you can't tell me. There we go. Perfect. Yes, thank you. I do have to run. I have to give Rob his oath to become a lawyer, so I have to go join him. But thank you, everybody. My name is Kevin Love. I'm a lawyer at the Community Legal Assistance Society, and I work in right now in the community law program. I've been with CLAS since 2006. I articled there and did a couple of years working in CLAS's mental health law program, and now work in the community law program. So I'll be spending most of my time talking about the community law program because I imagine those are the services that are most relevant to the people on the call here. But before I dive into that, I should mention that CLAS is an umbrella organization, so we actually have a number of different clinics, and I just want to go over those other clinics because I think they could be relevant to people as well. We have the Community Advocate Support Line, which I think people are familiar with. That's Alison Ward, who provides advice and assistance to advocates representing clients. We have the Human Rights Clinic. The Human Rights Clinic provides advice and representation to folks who have filed human rights complaints. They can't help people actually file the complaint, but once someone has a complaint filed, they can apply to the clinic for representation. We have the Mental Health Law Program that provides representation to people who are detained either civilly under the Mental Health Act or under the mental disorder provisions of the Criminal Code after a verdict of not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder or a finding that the individual is unfit to stand trial. And then our newest program is the Sexual Harassment Advice, Response, and Prevention Program, which provides advice with respect to sexual harassment in the workplace. All those programs also have provincial mandates. How we carry out the mandate is a little different depending on where the person's located, but all our programs are province-wide. So now I'll come back to the community law program, which is the program that I'm in. So we are 5 lawyers and 2.5 FTE support staff. We're funded by the Law Foundation. We're the most general, I would say, of CLAS's programs. We have a fairly flexible mandate, and we're always shifting a little bit to try to meet the needs of the community. And of course, with all the exciting new clinics coming online, we're going through that process again to try to evaluate how all of us are going to fit together to deliver the best service possible. In broad brushstrokes, we work in 5 areas: housing security, income security, workers' rights, mental health, and human rights. We can't do everything and anything in those areas. So generally our services are restricted to people who need to go to court. And the reason for that is because all of you on the call are wonderfully able to help people with things like the residential tenancy branch hearing, reconsideration with the ministry, employment standards, complaints, these types of things. So where we really come in is when you hit the end of the line, when you say to yourself, I can't go any further, either because the person has to go to court or if it's an exceptionally complex administrative proceeding, that's when we can get involved. We're also able and funded to do systemic work. And so this is taking on law reform work. It could be test cases, different activities to try to reform and advance the law on behalf of the communities that we represent. So if you are encountering issues over and over again, we are able to look at ways to try to address them at a more systemic level, rather than just constantly dealing with one-off cases. In terms of how you get in touch with CLAS, we have an intake assistant, Angela, who is really the front door for everything we do. And so wherever possible, we ask that you direct all requests for help through Angela. And if you just call CLAS and follow the instructions on our website, you'll get there. And there's a number of advantages of that. Number one, Angela gets everything set up. But on top of that, just picking up a little bit on what the last speaker was saying, when people call and come to the wrong place, we don't want to just send them away. And Angela maintains great connections with other organizations, with both legal and non-legal resources in the community. And so the idea is that if someone is in the wrong place, we can try wherever possible to get them to the right place. If you're calling for help, it helps us a lot to know whether you're calling to refer us a previous client of yours, or whether you're calling for advice yourself. We can do both, but it's just we need to know what direction the file's going. We love warm referrals, and it's always wonderful when there's an advocate involved to try to help the client get connected with us. But ultimately, we are going to have to meet and speak with the client if the help you're looking for is actually for assistance for the underlying client, rather than a question on one of your files. A question that's probably going to come up a lot for a lot of people, because it comes up a lot for us, is with all these new programs coming online, which is wonderful. Should I be calling CLAS, or should I be calling one of the new clinics? I would love to tell you that we've all hit a perfect answer on that. I don't think we have, and we're going to continue to try to figure out how everything fits together. But I would say generally that if there is a specialty clinic dealing with the issue you're calling about, it's probably best to call the specialty clinic first instead of CLAS. The idea of having a specialty clinic is that they are specialists, and they're probably going to know their areas better than us. Similarly, right after I be quiet, you will hear, I think, from the new regional clinics. And if somebody is calling from within the catchment or the area of one of the new regional clinics, I would say it probably makes sense to start there. Obviously the regional clinics are just one lawyer trying to do as much they can, and they may not be able to do everything, but it's generally a lot easier to deal with issues locally, rather than having us try to deliver service from Vancouver for someone in Kelowna or Prince George. But that said, we're really excited to work together with everybody, and there's so much work to go around, so I'm sure we'll all stay very busy. So unfortunately, I do have to run. I should say that almost everything I have said is available on our website. So if you just go to our website, you can find most of the answers. But if anybody does have any questions that I'm not able to get to right now, feel free to email me or give me a call, and I'll be more than happy to speak. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sticking around. I know you have to run now. So that's sort of the end of our specialty clinics. So what I was going to do is loop back now to some of the questions that have come up. We have a number for Gordon and the elder law clinic that we didn't get to. And the first one's really basic. It has to do with what age you consider to be a senior. So 55, 65.
Or
for
our purposes, a person must be 55 years old.
Okay. We have a few other questions related to the elder law clinic. Do you help seniors who've been victims of fraud?
Yes.
Okay.
And we assist them. We do assist victims of fraud or any kind of financial or property mischief. The issue we have, of course, we're a poverty law organization. We're to serve persons who live in poverty. If they have cases that are the type of case that the private bar will take, either on a fee for service or on a contingency fee basis, then we won't take them. We're not in competition with the private bar. We pick up where they can't take it on. And that's why our Supreme Court collection kinds of cases are ones where the amount of money involved, while it will fit into the Supreme Court, really doesn't justify, or most lawyers aren't able to take them on. So it gets a bit difficult, and we sometimes we make exceptions, but the answer to the question, yes, we do take those kinds of cases.
Okay, and then another specific case or question for you is in the context of the pandemic, lives were lost in seniors' care homes, and whether or not you would be able to support families who wanted to go to court or file a case where they'd lost a loved one.
No, that's essentially a wrongful death tort damage case, and we would not take that kind of case because, again, the private bar will take those kinds of cases.
Okay. So another question that we had, and Kevin sort of touched on this in the context of his program, but maybe what I'll do is ask other people to weigh in for your programs. Can advocates call you to discuss a case, get insights into cases in your areas of expertise? And if anyone wants to hop in on that.
I will jump in on that. Gordon Marshall, please do call me. And I do have for professionals or for advocates or lawyers, please call me direct, and I'll give you a number. I don't want this number given to clients, but I do. It is available to colleagues. It's 604-336-5653. So if you want to talk about a specific case or a specific set of circumstances, or you just want to bounce an idea off that you think I may be able to assist, please call me directly. Now remember, I'm part-time, but I do keep a pretty good eye on calls that they're incoming to my email as well. So please do feel free to call me, and call me direct and bypass the front office.
Anybody else on that one?
Yeah, this is Andrew at the Disability Law Clinic, and I think I would second what Gordon just said. I am happy to hear from any advocates or other lawyers who have questions on any issues that might come within the mandate of the Disability Law Clinic. Right now, we're still figuring out some technical issues, so there isn't really an easy way to call me directly, but I know, Darcy, that you put my email address up a little while ago, and I encourage advocates to contact me by email. So yeah, I certainly encourage advocates and anyone else who might be listening right now to contact me if they have questions. But as Gordon said, please don't give out my personal contact information to clients. I think we're happy to hear from you folks out there, but we want other people to probably go through our normal intake process.
And TRAC has also said that they're happy to hear from advocates directly where you want to sort of bounce ideas off or talk about a case.
Yeah, and we are too. This is the Immigration Legal Clinic. Sometimes what ends up happening though is that we might have an initial discussion, but we'll have to end up scheduling a summary advice appointment for the client themselves, because often it's hard to give advice when you don't have the full facts of the case from the person directly. But of course, contact us first to figure that out. Thanks.
Can I just add one comment, Darcy?
Yeah.
If you do call me, please have the names of the parties available, because I'll need to do a quick conflict check. we probably share a lot of people, or potentially would share a lot of people, in that we're all working in a pro bono area. So those names, if they're available, I can do a pretty quick conflict check while I'm online with you.
Hey, thanks everybody. We still have everybody from our regional poverty law clinics who are going to share a little bit about what they do. Maybe as you're talking about your programs, you can sort of answer this question as well in terms of how you want to work with advocates regionally in your area. I know some of you already are doing that, and how that's going. We also had a question about whether people are seeing more housing eviction cases, and I thought that would be particularly relevant to the poverty law program. So maybe at the end, once everybody's gone through, we can loop back on that question. So I'm going to turn it over to Sharon Cahill-Kearney. She's the clinical lawyer at Sources Community Law Clinic.
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel. And I can say that I learned so much about some areas of law that I just haven't, and what these specialized clinics are doing. So very interesting. And I'm very pleased to be part of this group. So I'm the lawyer who's heading up the new regional law clinic, which is housed at Sources Community Resource Center. Our offices are located in Surrey, and the clinic opened in January of this year. By way of background about me, I've been practicing administrative law since my call to the bar in BC in 1987. And for any of you who just can quickly do the math, that's an awful long time. But I'm particularly pleased to be part of this new offering, which will, I think, definitely increase access to justice in our province. So just a little bit about Sources. Sources is an internationally accredited, community-based nonprofit organization. They've been around over 40 years. They have offices in the Lower Mainland, in northern BC, and on Vancouver Island. Sources' overall mission is to promote social wellness in our communities, and as such, the clinic, whose aim is to increase access to justice, it fits well within the services provided by Sources. So we typically provide services in the communities of Surrey, White Rock, South Surrey, Delta, Langley, Cloverdale, and Newton. However, where needed, we will provide services to anyone who fits our eligibility criteria and lives in the Metro Vancouver area. So we, like the other regional clinics which have been created, we provide legal information, advice, advocacy, and representation to economically disadvantaged individuals to assist them with dealing with a variety of provincial and federal administrative tribunals. Now, such legal services are often referred to as poverty law. Because of the stigma attached to the word poverty, we chose not to include that in the title of our clinic because we were finding that it was preventing otherwise eligible individuals from accessing our services. So we're just simply known as Sources Community Law Clinic. So we assist individuals who are making or responding to administrative tribunal applications, or who are filing internal appeals of those of decisions coming out of administrative tribunals. And the tribunals we commonly deal with, and I can only go back to the 9 months that we've been operating, those include the Employment and Assistance Tribunal, the BC Human Rights Tribunal, the Employment Standards Branch and Tribunal, Social Security Tribunal, Workers' Compensation Tribunal, Workers' Compensation Appeal Tribunal, the Residential Tenancy Branch, and the Civil Resolution Tribunal. We are also able to challenge decisions of administrative tribunals by way of judicial review in the BC Supreme Court if the decisions are incorrect or unreasonable or the hearing process leading up to the decision was procedurally unfair. Sometimes I find it's easier to define our services by listing those which are outside of our scope of services, and I noted that other presenters today have done so. So we don't deal with immigration, refugee matters, property-related matters, strata property-related matters, personal injury, which includes ICBC or MVA matters, wills, estates, criminal, and family law with one caveat, which I'll address in a bit. We often do get people calling in, seeking services in that area, and then what we will do is refer them, make sure that we refer them somewhere that can handle their cases. And that often means one of the specialty clinics, which includes CLAS, or access pro bono, or perhaps a duty counsel in certain cases. So as the clinic lawyer at Sources, I work very closely with Gunj Bajaz, who is the legal assistant, and with Guy Riseborough, who is the poverty law advocate at Sources. And I've been blessed to have a number of law student volunteers who have asked to volunteer as part of the clinic, and they've been a huge resource and help for us. During these COVID times, we are primarily working by email and phone, Teams, Zoom, but we will, when necessary, see a client in the office in a safe manner. So Sources Clinic, the law clinic, also works in conjunction with the family law advocates at Sources to provide some very limited scope representation on family law files. And these are for individuals who are ineligible or have exhausted assistance from legal aid or access pro bono or the family duty counsel. So we do a limited amount, and that was a caveat I mentioned earlier about family law. And likewise, we provide support and supervision of the work that's done by the poverty law program at Sources. And primarily, I work closely in conjunction with the poverty law advocate, as I mentioned earlier. Like many of the other legal clinics, I'm available as a contact to any of the Law Foundation funded advocates who wish to consult on complex cases or perhaps refer files. I think my information, Sources information, is contained on the Law Foundation website. If not, I'd be happy to add that into the chat. And in time, I'm really hoping to develop and present some public legal education seminars. And that very much depends on the trends that may develop during and post-COVID. But I've done a lot of legal education training by way of background, and I enjoy that, and I'd be very happy to develop and present those. So that's generally all I wanted to say about Sources Clinic. I'll turn it back to you then, Darcy, to send it on to one of the other clinic lawyers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sharon. And just so that everybody knows, the scope of service for the various regional legal clinics are very similar. So we'll spend some time on a few other issues as we move through. And I'm just going to turn it over to Odette Dempsey Caputo, who's the lawyer at Kamloops and District Elizabeth Fry Society's legal clinic.
So I just want to start off with saying that the Elizabeth Fry Legal Clinic does acknowledge that our office is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded homelands of the Secwepemc Nation. We are here in Kamloops. The Kamloops and District Elizabeth Fry Society is our host agency, and it's a feminist organization that is active in the community based on nonprofit. It's a nonprofit agency that offers various programs and services, especially in the area of housing and community justice. Now, at the Elizabeth Fry Legal Clinic, we do service more than just, of course, females. We service everyone And so we at the Elizabeth Fry Legal Clinic here in Kamloops, we started in December of 2019. And there's myself as a lawyer, and we have 2 advocates. We have a family law advocate as well as a poverty law advocate. Just to our services, as stated, are very similar to what Sharon put out. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we work with advocates. So we're actually, all the legal clinics, we're very fortunate to work with so many advocates, including some in the surrounding areas. I would say the advocates we work alongside with the advocates as a team. And I would like to point out that as many of you guys are here, I would say that the advocates are the frontline workers to access to justice. And so they kind of offer as a bridge to us as lawyers. One of the ways of doing that is IDing the legal issues as well as introducing the client to the lawyer for a smoother transition. One of the things I'd like to point out is a lot of time these clients have had very bad experiences when it comes to people that are in the legal community like lawyers. So having advocates there to kind of help bridge that gap is, I think, a significant thing to be happening through these legal clinics. Pretty much every regional clinic is working directly with advocates, has them within the organization. But as I said, we do service greater areas. One of the areas in Kamloops, for example, we service Salmon Arm, Merritt. We're hoping to go up to Lillooet. We had that in place, and then COVID hit, but we're hoping to get back out there, as well as the Ashcroft area. And we do this by connecting with the advocates in those various areas. And it's my understanding the other legal clinics are doing that as well. As far as doing community outreach, all the legal clinics, we are reaching out to the community, different people within the community, different organizations within the community. So we may go there and present. We do various public legal education. One of them that I did, I was actually asked to do some at the Kamloops Immigration Society here in Kamloops, was around residential tenancy issues. So we can, the beauty of having a regional is we can actually be more specific to our regional needs as well as needs that you might see in different areas. So that is something that we kind of work out. And I should have pointed out that I've actually been working in this area. I've been a lawyer for about 12 years now, just over 12 years. And I've worked in the Kamloops area for most of that time. So I'm very familiar with the Kamloops and surrounding area. I also have a background. I did work at a student legal clinic as well before coming over here to the Elizabeth Fry Society. So the regional clinic advocates and community workers can refer clients over to us. Just to go into how we do our intake processes, that you would actually call into Elizabeth Fry Clinic. Our receptionist will either send it to whichever advocate that either the poverty law advocate or the family law advocate, or to the lawyer assistant who would then do the screening and set up an appointment. We also do referrals amongst each other. So one of the things you talk about working with advocates is an advocate might start out with a file, take it to the residential tenancy, and then they get a decision that comes back that's clearly we're able to take on to judicial review. That would be a file that then the advocate would be able to refer over to myself or one of the regional lawyers, and we would then be able to take it into the Supreme Court and have that judicial review. So it really is working together. I've had clients where I started out on a file and then may refer it to one of the advocates if a family law issue comes up, or if it's more particularized of filling out the documents versus taking it up to a judicial review. And I would like to say that I may have been a lawyer for over 10 years, but I would say the advocates have extreme amount of knowledge in areas that I necessarily wouldn't have dealt with as a lawyer, and that being at the very beginning of a lot of these tribunals and how to fill out the forms and what kind of the different ministries, like when it comes to income assistance, might be looking for. So that's what the regional clinics are here to help out with. And I will give it back to you, Darcy, to hand on to the next regional clinic lawyer.
Okay, thanks so much, Odette. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Daniel Jackson from Together Against Poverty Society in Victoria.
Thanks, Darcy. So there we go, start my video. So as Darcy said, I work with Together Against Poverty Society, which operates on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, now known as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, or Victoria. And I'll start with a little bit about me really quickly. I came to TAPS about 3.5 years ago as an advocate and did that work for about a year, and then took an articling position with the same organization, and I'm now the staff lawyer. And I'm excited not only to have this position, but that TAPS has now secured at least semi-permanent articling position, and we have our second articling student just started in September. And all of these programs are basically combined at TAPS. So we see ourselves as working as one large team. Our scope is similar to what's already been outlined for the other regional clinics and for CLAS. So income security, housing security, employment standards. We have a tax clinic also that people can come to and have their taxes done thanks to our tax coordinator. And those services at the advocacy level are available to sort of the greater Victoria area. And my services, which I'll talk a little bit more about, are available to anyone on Vancouver Island or the Gulf Islands. So that's my regional scope. It's broader than just TAPS. Similar to the other regional clinics, the lawyer position looks after a larger area in terms of what we do. And what I do is again, already been outlined by the other regional clinics. I do JR work on those areas of litigation. And I was asked to say a few words specifically about how, specifically at TAPS, but also Vancouver Island-wide, I see the staff lawyer position sort of integrating with an existing clinic, because TAPS has been operating in the Victoria area for over 20 years. Our advocacy programs are long-standing and well-staffed. There's almost a dozen of us now, I think, working full-time. So we have a large team, and the lawyer position was a new one. And I think we've done a good job of allowing the lawyer to work sort of in parallel with advocate files where that's appropriate. So for any advocates on Vancouver Island or the Gulf Islands, I would encourage you to reach out to me. I'll post my email in the chat. Email is probably the best way to get in touch with me, but reach out to me if you're working on a file that you think might end up going to judicial review for whatever reason. You have an inclination that something's not going to go quite right at the RTB hearing or the EAT hearing, whatever it happens to be. Or if you have a file that you feel engages multiple areas of law, and maybe one of those areas isn't something that you're able to work on. So human rights is one example. Trying to think of another simple one off the top of my head. Sometimes in housing, there's interactions that are outside the RTA, which a lot of advocates aren't allowed to work with. So on reserve housing or possibly co-op housing. So if you have files that fit within the sort of description of the services you normally provide, but maybe don't fall squarely in the area of law that you're comfortable or allowed by your grants to work with, you can contact me at any time in those files, like before necessarily things have gone sideways or before you refer someone out, and see if maybe we can work in parallel on that, or if it's appropriate to refer them down to me. Obviously during COVID, I'm not sort of traveling around the island or doing any of that sort of work, but much can be accomplished remotely. So even if you're not in the immediate Victoria area, I'd be happy to speak to you about those sorts of files. And then again, if you do end up losing an RTB hearing or an EAT hearing and you feel like it should be appealed to a Supreme Court, I'm also happy to help with those. So again, you'll have my contact info. And I would encourage you to just reach out as much as possible. POVNet is one other way to reach out to the whole team of lawyers if you just have specific legal questions, and that's really effective. I find it can be really effective at least. So the personal contact I think is more useful if you have a file that you're wanting to take through a tribunal process and it maybe has some parallel considerations, or you just want someone to bounce ideas off of. I know a lot of advocates don't have the benefit of the larger team that we have down at TAPS in Victoria, and you just want to talk things through. I'm not taking over the role of any supervising lawyers. So my advice is typically more like strategic and litigation based as opposed to the purely legal questions. But again, if you're having trouble reaching your supervising lawyer, or you're just not sure how to proceed strategically, I'm very happy to have those conversations by phone or email or over this platform. Just skimming through my notes to see if there was anything else I felt was really important. Those are the big ones. TAPS, of course, has a website that describes in much more detail all of our services and has our basic contact info. So that's tapsbc.ca. Encourage you to check that out. And I'll post my email in the chat when I'm done talking here. That's the best way to get in touch with me directly, because the public sort of phone number just goes to our front desk. I'll say a few words about intake. Others have talked about that, and our process is maybe a little bit different. So just so you know, if you're referring clients to us more generically, not directly, like an advocate and I aren't having a conversation, you're just sending a client to TAPS. We do have a front desk sort of reception system. So the person that they first talk to won't be an advocate or myself, a lawyer. It'll be either a front desk volunteer or a front desk staff person that takes their basic info, and then they'll get a call back within a week-ish, depending on the program that they're needing to speak with. So just to let people know that if you're sending them our way, there's typically a bit of a lag. Obviously, if it's something urgent like an eviction, we'll get back to them much quicker. And that applies for both advocates and for myself. I think those were all the major points that I needed to cover. Happy to take questions. I haven't been looking at the chat. But perhaps there's some questions about what we do, or we can talk about some specific cases, for example. Thanks, Darcy.
Thank you very much. So, and thanks to everybody for sharing your contact information in the chat. I think we have also posted the link. Kayla's posted it for everyone's contact information. And that also includes Charlotte Oxford from Kelowna Friendship Society, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. And then also Dewana St. Germain, who's providing services in the north. So you can find people's emails, their contact information at that link any point in time. Well, thank you all for sharing so much. We do have a couple questions, and maybe I'll just loop back to the first one that we had. Well, other people can feel free to put questions into the chat about what people are seeing around housing and evictions now that the eviction moratorium is over. If anyone wants to weigh in on that.
Seniors First has seen the legal advocacy program has had a tremendous uptake in cases involving eviction and residential tenancy since the restrictions were lifted. Our poor advocate Nagat Afsar is, I think, running ragged with them. So that has been a growth industry in the past few weeks, unfortunately.
This is Sharon at Sources Law Clinic. Yeah, likewise, same as Gordon, we've seen an incredible influx in the type of these cases. So yeah, they're filling our plates these days.
Okay, thank you. So for the people in the newer clinics who, some of you have been operating since April, some of you going back to December of 2019, I'm wondering if anyone would like to share some of the cases or an example of a case that sort of came to you that stuck with you or helped you sort of formulate how you think about what the role is that you're playing in the community. And I'm seeing from other people too, from advocates, that they're swamped with residential tenancy issues and income security. So it's for the advocates as well. But yeah, I just wanted to open it up for those of you who are just getting your clinics underway, and what kind of cases you're seeing, or if there's a case that stood out to you so far that's kind of helped illustrate the role that you are playing or want to be playing in the community.
I can start on that one.
Great, thanks.
I will talk about a landlord-tenant matter, and I didn't chime in just a minute ago, Darcy, when you asked what people's experiences are with evictions, because typically that is something that the disability law clinic is less likely to get involved in, because even though there is often some form of disability connection, we don't view that as strictly within our mandate. But I did have one case recently that that I would call more clearly connected to a disability issue, where there was a tenant who was facing eviction, or who was facing a 1-month notice of eviction due to noise complaints about him. He had been making too much noise, and neighbors had complained to the landlord. And a health authority worker reached out to our office and asked us to contact him, and they had very clear and strong evidence that that the tenant was causing excessive noise as a result of his disability. And what it was is the tenant had lived in the same unit for a long time, for 7 or 8 years, never had any problems, but then because of an injury he sustained that affected his brain, he became less able to control his mood and to control the volume of his voice. And we had very helpful, strong evidence from a number of healthcare practitioners, including a psychiatrist and a rehab-focused doctor, that said exactly that, that said, you know, we are working on this problem, but we understand that right now, this is a person who has a great deal of difficulty regulating mood and volume. And so we assisted him to apply for dispute resolution at the residential tenancies branch, which I will say that I do not have a lot of experience at the RTB. I have almost no experience there. That is something that many of my colleagues on this panel know a lot more about than I do. But the purpose of it in that case was really just to buy some time, because what we felt was that because of the disability connection, the case was really more appropriately dealt with by the Human Rights Tribunal, by the Provincial Human Rights Tribunal. But that raised difficulties because, as many of you will know, the Provincial Human Rights Tribunal does not act quickly. Most cases there take many, many months to go through their process, whereas the RTB certainly does have the ability to act very quickly and for landlords to get an eviction order in fairly short order. So while we were waiting for the dispute resolution hearing at the RTB, we submitted a complaint to the Human Rights Tribunal, and we put it at the same time we submitted the complaint, we put in an application for the tribunal process to be expedited, which the tribunal does have the power to do, although my understanding is they don't use that power very frequently. And that was effective in the end. The landlord, once the landlord received the human rights complaint and the application to expedite the human rights complaint, the landlord backed down and agreed to withdraw the eviction notice and the dispute resolution hearing at the RTB. I will say, I mean, the case is not over, right? I mean, this individual is still facing a disability that might well result in further noise complaints and further problems with the landlord. But I think that our office, it was for me an example of how effective our office can be, because we were able to get onto the human rights complaint track, which I think is not something that is typically used in landlord-tenant cases, just because the human rights complaint process doesn't generally work as quickly as the RTB process does. But I was pleased with the outcome, even though it's not a permanent fix, at least not at this point. But I think it did illustrate how a specialty legal clinic like this one can sort of pull together different types of strategy and different types of techniques in order to resolve that type of problem. Darcy, I see you speaking, but I think you're on mute.
I am muted. I'm unmuted now. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm wondering if anyone else has any stories you'd like to share from sort of the first year of clinic life.
So I'd like to share one. When I first started, one of the, actually Duty Counsel referred a file over to us, and it was a mom whose son was struggling with mental health issues and was doing a lot of muttering to themselves, became more violent than the mom had seen. The mom was not only terrified for herself, but was more concerned about just getting help for the son. Now, the problem is, as we all know, when someone's struggling with some of these mental health issues, getting them into a doctor is next to impossible. So the mom was able to come to us, and within a couple of days, we were able to make a Section 28 under the Mental Health Act. We got into the court, we got a protection order so that the son couldn't harm the mom. As well, we got a Section 28 apprehension. So what that means was the apprehension, the police are able to go and pick the son up. They took the son to be assessed, and they can hold them for 48 hours. Follow-up with that is that the son was actually able to get the help that they needed. So it was, if we hadn't been here, we wouldn't have been able to get in that fast. There was no lawyer that would have been able to step in for that. The mom was not somebody who had a lot of money, and the son was living right in their home. It was an adult son. So that's one where I think a regional clinic was able to step in pretty quick.
Thanks so much for sharing. Does anyone else have a story or case that you'd like to share with the group?
Hi, it's Sharon Cooney here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think I'll turn my video on now too. There we go. Yeah, one of the earliest cases that came into our office was a fellow who had a long history, legal history. He had been working in a facility, had been harassed there, was unsuccessful in his attempts to get onto workers' compensation as a result of that. His union eventually got him onto workers' compensation benefits. He asked the union to then file a human rights complaint on his behalf. They were unable to. So he hired a private lawyer who filed a complaint. Now, by this time, a lot of time had passed, and not surprisingly, the Human Rights Tribunal issued a decision saying, you know, you are beyond the limitation period and really haven't provided a reasonable excuse for that. It seems like the private lawyer never explained to him sort of what the basis of the limitation periods are, why we have them. Rather, he said, well, we can judicially review this decision and it'll cost you X amount of money. And without any other sort of advice, that's what this fellow did. So by the time he had called me, there had been a judicial review filed. I assessed it. I realized it had very little chance of success. And all I did was simply explain to him, you know, why, you know, tribunals and courts have limitation periods, why they're important, how difficult it is if you're beyond that. I just didn't want to see him throwing away any more good money. So he was so grateful. He was so grateful because this file had spanned a half a dozen years. And nowhere in that time had anybody from the union or his lawyer's office ever explained to him, just in very simple terms, you know, what he was looking at. So he continues to contact me to tell me about how he's getting on with his life now that this is behind him.
Thanks so much for sharing. Does anyone else have anything you'd like to share with the group? Also, if anyone has any questions, this is sort of last call for questions in the Q&A section. All right, seeing none, I just want to thank all of you for coming, joining, taking time out of your busy practices to share a little bit about what you're doing. It's really exciting and inspiring to hear about, and I feel really fortunate to get to work with some of you in various ways and to hear about your work. Oh, but a quick question. Does anyone work with clients who are incarcerated?
Yeah, I mean, we do. If they can contact us for sure if people are detained for immigration reasons. So sometimes they contact our office and they can, for sure.
Any of the other clinics, if this is something that's come up, or?
It hasn't come up at sources. This is Sharon, but that wouldn't be any impediment to us providing services, provided it's in, within the scope of services that we offer.
We would be more than welcome, willing to work with somebody who's incarcerated, knowing that we can't deal with criminal law issues. So as long as it wasn't a criminal law matter, and like Sharon said, it fit underneath what the regional clinics are able to take on, it wouldn't impede it at all.
I would echo what my colleague said. I mean, we could certainly, I know the major barrier there would probably not be us being able to assist them, but them being able to contact us in the first place. But if they can knock on our door, we'll answer it.
Okay, thanks everybody. All right, well, you all have contact information for the various clinics. Thank you all for taking the time out to participate, and thank you so much to all of our panelists. It's really inspiring to hear from you all. Thanks everyone.